Good morning. Tired. A rough day yesterday, as we had a plumbing disaster and continual fiasco upon fiasco. Did not get my plumbing problems fixed until late last night after dinner. I don't know what's worse, right? How do we know we are spoiled in the modern world? Go 2 days without plumbing, right? Without being able to use your shower, wash dishes, use your toilet, right? We have a kind of a double-edged sword. Directly across the street from my house is a park, a private park with a public toilet. And of course, it's well cared for and well taken care of, and it's open to the public. So fortunately, we are not completely without the opportunity to use the toilet, but bathing, etc. And dishes pile up, laundry piles up, all the things that we grow to do. It just kind of messes up the whole mojo of the thing. And then trying to get it fixed, wrestling with getting plumbers to the house and identifying the problem, and then getting it fixed in a reasonable amount of time and money. And that's not what this video is about, but it just messed up my whole day yesterday. So anyway, we had to postpone Simba Room last night. I was mostly in the wrong mindset, and I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to be trying to conduct a game while plumbers and my wife was having to deal with plumbers outside. So it was just best to cancel everything. And I was irritated and in no good mood anyway, but I wasn't going to be here trying to conduct a game of Simba Room when the problem was unresolved and my wife was having to, so, it's domestication, right? So, all right. Anyway, I'm way off topic, but you can tell that it's traumatic. It scarred me deeply. I was ready to run a great Simba Room session last night. So hopefully tonight everybody's going to be able to hop on and we'll do it tonight. But no big deal if we can't. We just roll with the punches. We do Joth next week. We do, we just roll with it. We're planning on gaming for a long time, so I don't feel like anything is a must do right this second. So, but this is supposed to be June inspiration film, right? And I try to tie the inspirational film to gaming or game mechanics, and that's not really easy to do, as film is a completely different medium. It's completely different. And role playing, I've said before, is not acting. It is not story writing. It is an activity you do socially. Hopefully the game itself provides the mechanical system intent, and the players come understanding the genre, the intent, and the GM runs the game respecting the intent of the game, and we end up having that experience. And some of those things are some games are about writer room. Some games are about storytelling or story sharing, right? And there's mechanisms that support that kind of game. And then there's games where you just play to find out. There's games where you play, we all of us veterans know that, right? Okay, so it's harder for me to necessarily connect my inspirations to mechanics, but I'll try. And part of that is I want to talk about a film, because like I said, it is the thing that I enjoy the most outside of gaming and, of course, sport. I am a huge sports fan, football in particular. So these are the things that I enjoy the most in my free time, so to speak. Okay. So anyway, so film is a tough one because I have a ton, and I've talked about it before. We mentioned some of the inspirations for Dark Age of Man in our rule book of what it's not just an inspiration, but what would help people get into the mindset of Dark Age of Man. We recommend a couple of TV shows and a couple of movies and a couple of books. But I want to talk about a couple of things that I think are very difficult to pull off inspirational ideas in film, but I think are really problematic at the table. And one of those is the unreliable narrator, right? And the best example of the unreliable narrator that I think everybody knows and has seen and hopefully liked and respected the movie was Usual Suspects, right? The entire film is told, the entire story is told to us and the detective by a unreliable narrator, a false narrator, somebody who is lying the entire time. And this is an amazing film thing, right? This is an amazing thing to be witness to as an unsuspecting audience. And the twist, right? A really good one is Sixth Sense. He's unreliable, but not because he's deceiving us, but because he's doesn't recognize his condition. Sixth Sense is a masterpiece. I think it's still M. Night Shyamalan's best film ever. There was just something remarkable about the moment where it dawns on all of us that he's also in the same condition that he thinks he's not. And again, that makes him an unreliable narrator, even if he's not purposely deceiving us or deceiving the audience, the writer of the story, right? So why is unreliable narrator difficult in gaming? Well, because the players obviously aren't going to be unreliable narrators to a story that doesn't exist. They're going to be players responding and reacting and hopefully taking action against the things that they trust you as a GM are giving them. So if the GM is an unreliable narrator, that breaks the entire game. That is a false agreement that we're going to be fair about this deal that we do at the table. But I could present an unreliable narrator as an NPC who can provide exposition or provide missions or etc. that the players adhere to without question, and then later find out they have been lied to or cheated or deceived. This is difficult, and I think it's something I rarely do to the players that don't involve an opportunity for mechanical observation of deception, right? So we use mechanics to see if the players can recognize that they're being deceived or that something isn't kosher. Because if I just tell them as a trustworthy NPC and they accept my narration, they accept that king is not misleading them, right? You can then still have the twist that the king lied to them and this is the result of their works and they did the job under false pretenses. That can be an interesting twist. It can make the players angry. It can make the players angry at the king, etc. But very often it'll make the players feel like you have duped them, right? So it's a very dangerous choice for NPCs. And certainly as a GM, I would not be an unreliable narrator because that's very bad business. I think that's bad gaming to just lie to the players and constantly manipulate the players. That's manipulation. That's not gaming. But I've used unreliable narrators, but you have to be very careful about whether they can mechanically pick this up. And we're not talking about just sleight of hand. We're not talking about just illusions. We're talking about the pretense that they can engage with a trusted NPC that they believe is on the right side of the deal, and right. So I think those are dangerous things. So a couple of those films that are inspirations for me in that sense is Usual Suspects with Kevin Spacey as the one of the usual suspects. A great film. And then of course Sixth Sense I think is very cool because again he's unreliable, but mostly because he's isn't aware of his condition, right? And that's what makes that so cool. And there's others, but I can't right offhand think of others. But as far as two films that are inspirations to me, now granted, I generally run fantasy, so something like Usual Suspects is a modern crime drama. Of course, Sixth Sense is a modern psychological trope. I won't say psychological horror, but psychological. Yeah, I guess it is in a way horror, right? Psychological tweak. But in fantasy, it would be something as simple as trusting trusting the king or trusting the queen, or providing somebody that's been beside the players through 5 or 6 weeks or sessions, and they've grown to be part of the group, and it turns out all of it was to set the group up to get what the NPC wants. That can be at times, it can feel very, players can feel really screwed, and they can feel that there may have been a contrivance there, which in a way there is, right? Because the NPC is the unreliable narrator, right? The unreliable source, so to speak. This evil king, you got to stop him, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on and on and on and on. And the only way they get that information is from this unreliable narrator. right? And then they discovered that this, after the deal has been done, they haven't verified how evil this king is through other sources, or they haven't seen, right? Show, don't tell. They haven't seen evidence that this king is really evil along their journeys, but they haven't been paying attention, right? So, hopefully you provide all the clues that would cue them that maybe this king isn't as evil as Joe is telling us, right? Kind of thing. So anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about that, the unreliable narrator as a game mechanic, as a game tool to use with NPCs, etc. I think is very, very risky, because it can confuse, of course, the GM with the NPCs. They can confuse the information, unless we're going to allow for mechanical observations that could save the players from being completely duped, because they're, again, players are hopefully trusting your GM is playing a fair role, right, to some degree, right? They should always be careful of the NPCs they talk to, right? I mean, it's on the players to scrutinize whether they like this person, and whether they trust this person, or whether they're aligned with this person's motivations, or they're aligned with this person's ideals, right? So they should be scrutinizing that as characters in the game, right? Dark Age of Man for me is because we are naive narrators. We play a presenter as the game master. You are presenting the world and the variables. We are trying to stay authentic and true to what we have already allowed to be, we've already put in front of the players or what they provide. We try to verify these things through luck checks or through attribute checks. We then further create random variables that come into play that can be positive or negative, that the players can become focused on or ignore. And Dark Age of Man, because of the nature of being a non-combat focused game, obviously there's combat, obviously there's going to be swordplay, there's going to be Vikings, there's going to be fantastical beasts that they might have to protect a family from an ogre coming out of the woods or whatever, But the game is not meant to be a D&D-esque boss fight night kind of thing, right? It's meant to have you're meant to inhabit a character in a medieval village, in a medieval world, and deal with what subjects and variables arise. Hopefully, some will be in conflict with your motivations and in conflict with what you're trying to achieve as a character. And the GM doesn't have an agenda in particular, but has to present the world and its motivations and the NPCs and their motivations legitimately, to not give everything the players want, and at the same time represent a fair world, a world that would say, no, Joe the blacksmith isn't going to just make you a sword for nothing. Joe doesn't get anything from that. So we have legitimate conflict. Drama can come out of the negotiation between Bill and Joe the blacksmith to get a sword made, and it can be something as simple as exchange of services, or exchange of currency, or exchange of obligation, right? But my point is, Dark Age of Man would be a great environment for unreliable narrators, right? So because we are naive narrators and we don't know everybody's motivations, we don't know the outcome, we don't know where the players are going, we don't know how the world's going to evolve, it can be a very, very good system for the unreliable narrator to rear its head. So part of why I started working on these concepts with Dell on his 50th birthday, and we started playing AI, and we started using simpler systems so we could get to this naive narrator role as the GM, and start allowing the players to have a lot more agency, and create variables that occur that just make the world live, so to speak. One of the reasons I was aiming toward this style of GMing, this style of gaming, was to get closer to my inspirations, film, right? How could we see more unreliable narrator in role-playing and not feel like you've been cheated by the GM, etc., right? How can we see characters quite literally inhabit the space and pursue their own motivations without obstruction by the system, or obstruction by the GM, or obstruction? The GM is there, of course, to put conflict and context and potential drama in front of the characters. But I want gaming to be more character driven, less GM driven, right? World is a character. The setting is a character. So GMs should think about the world and the setting as an actual character, right? They should think about the world, the NPCs, etc., as legitimate people who have legitimate motives and goals, right? I think that's true of all of our gaming, but not as hard fence posts, not as tent posts or flag poles, and that you're asking the players to just navigate around like a slalom, right? I want the characters in Dark Age of Man to be absolutely free to exist and to pursue this ideal of what they are. If Brian says I'm a lord and I'm 20 years old and I have a little brother and I have a small holding and I took over my father's, and that, which means he has some royalty. He is an alderman, even though he's only 20 years old. He's inherited this, and he's got a different role in negotiating. Lord Washburn can call Brian in as an alderman and elicit actual advice and to make demands of him. And at the same time, there's a relationship for an alderman, right? In the greater civilization, right? The Lord and the aldermans, right, in a way support the Lord, etc. So, or you can be you can be a orphaned girl who is perceived by many as a witch, and she's navigating the dangers of a very superstitious world that doesn't like the idea of witchcraft. And we have a character that's put herself, we have a player who's put their character in a very dangerous situation. And what is their goal? Maybe they don't know. They want to see how this world navigates this 13-year-old girl as she, or this 16-year-old woman, or whatever it is, as she begins the process of being a pagan witch to help the poor, but could be perceived by many as a witch, and it becomes very dangerous. I mean, I can't imagine what your character, what you want to be in Dark Age of Man, but I know the system supports different types of options for again, these film or story techniques without the game being mechanically a story game necessarily, right? So anyway, I want to talk about that. Inspirational films, The Usual Suspects, Sixth Sense. Both of them use an unreliable narrator, right? As we all discovered at the end of Usual Suspects, it's all a lie. He made it all up. And walks out, gets in a car, and drives away. He literally lied his way through the interrogation, and we all just believe everything he says, like the detective is believing it, right, to make sense of it. And then Sixth Sense, until we all realize that he too is dead, right? The little kid says, "I see dead people," and having this conversation dealing with this kid, not realizing, well, the kid sees dead people. Dude, you're dead. Nobody else is responding to you. You're not actually having relationships with these people. It's not dawning on him that he too is dead, and that's why this kid is talking to him, right? It's a brilliant film, and I like to think this could happen in a role playing, but boy, talk about a certain type of game system and a certain level of elite gaming that I don't know if I could ever achieve, and I don't know if it is easily possible, especially unless we have a game written with mechanics that quite literally define, how we go about issue resolution with mechanical devices of dice or cards or whatever or voting, etc. There can be games clearly that have mechanical apparatus in play to support a structured idea of this thing. The problem with that is then the players know what the goal is. The players know they're dealing with an unreliable narrator, and they're attempting to manipulate the mechanics of the game to achieve an end. So I like better that it's more traditional in that there's mystery, lots of mystery, and the players as characters are taking this mystery and it unfolds or it occurs live as in play to find out, etc. Or it can be well prepared as an event, a thing you're going to deal with. So, all right, everybody, thanks for watching. I'm not going to do a ton of these. There's a few films that I've talked about in the past and movies I've talked about in the past, but I'm trying to choose things too that I think about as a GM, and I think about as a game designer, game developer. How would I want to see a game with Unreliable Narrator working and working interestingly without feeling like the players have been lied to or cheated, so to speak, right? And obviously that has to come from the NPCs and the player's relationship with the NPCs, less the feeling that I am the GM authority and what I say is bond, right? They already trust me to be the even kill. Just, hopefully they trust you as a GM to just present a fair world, right, to some degree. All right, thanks for watching.